All right. Well, good afternoon or good morning, wherever you happen to be located today. Thanks for joining the regularly scheduled October Power Platform Master Series. I appreciate everybody coming in. We've got a special guest today, Mike Voris, who just came off camera, who's going to be leading our session today to discuss Power Pages. Mike and I have a previous history together, and he's a solid technical specialist here at Microsoft with a strong background in the low code space. Real quick, just kind of wanted to level set on why we're here and a little bit about the Master Series itself. Just a reminder, it is an educational series that we focus on topics purely around the Power Platform and ways to extend the platform itself. It's really designed for any sort of Power Platform enthusiasts. That can be citizen developers, administrators, or straight up newbies to the platform itself. We try doing this once a month, although we do have special editions. For instance, last week we did a recap of everything that happened at the Power Platform Conference in Vegas. But we try to do these once a month, and I do my best to get communications out to everybody with a way to register at least 2 weeks prior to them. So keep an eye out for them as they circulate from either myself or from your Microsoft sellers. Every time we do these, they're always a virtual Teams webinars. Eventually, we like to get to a point where we can have a hybrid session held at one of the MTCs and can invite people to come in and participate while we're also doing these virtual. And then why? We really do these to both educate you and to also learn from you a lot of the parts of your business and what you are doing and any issues that you might be facing, and it gets us thinking a little bit about ways that we can use the platform to help. So again, thanks again for joining. I'm going to hand things over to Mike here in just a second to kick things off. But if anybody's got any questions, as I've mentioned previously, you're available to come off of mute. Feel free to come off and participate in the conversation. If you don't want to come off of mute, we've got a small army of specialists that are available in the chat where you can raise questions and we can keep the conversation going that way. But without further ado, Mike, it's all yours.
Thanks, Jeff. Just a sound and a presentation check where we see the slides, we hear the mic.
Yep, looks good.
Okay, yes, great. So Jeff did most of my introduction for me already. So I'm a technical specialist that works in the Northeast, so colleagues with Jeff and the team. I've been in the dynamic space for the better part of 12 years at this point, and I've been in Power Platform since pretty much its inception. So excited to be here and to talk through Power Pages, which is one of the ones I've been really trying to dive in on because I see a lot of value that we'll go through today. So overall, what we're going to do is just level set on Power Pages and on low code in general. So just a couple thoughts on low code. And then we're going to talk about all the game changers that have that are in the process of being released, a bunch of new features around Power Pages that really enhance the functionality. And then we're going to run through a quick demo that came from a customer that really highlights the value of the better together approach. As the Master Series logo shows, there's a bunch of features within the Power Platform, and when we think about end-to-end solutions, we typically use multiple features in that, and so we'll walk through what that looks like. So let's dive in. So we know that there's a strategic shift in low code, and we see Charles Lamanna, the head of Power Platform. He has a bunch of slides around the rate of acceleration in low code development. So we are in the middle of that, and what we expect to see is that the need for low code to continue to grow, right? So we know there's going to be a developer shortfall. And how do we handle that? Like, how do we, as companies address that need? And then the idea there is low code can address those challenges by abstracting away the code components into things like natural language building and low code apps like the Power Platform. And what that does is that expands the pool of folks and skill sets that are able to build apps at scale. But we're here to really talk about Pages and what that how that works. And what we see in Pages is that because it's more web front end based, less containerized like Power Apps, there's still a big need for that pro code development, right? So the pro code development within the website space is still very much in there, where you're building these with front-end developers, back-end developers, data and security. There's a lot of challenges that come with building custom websites, right? And especially data-connected websites. We have to deal with things like knowing who the person is. So when you have them log in, we know it's that person, what they can do. And then when we start from a Power Pages standpoint, that becomes a little easier because it's a little bit more managed than starting with a brand new web app where you have to build those things in. There are templates, but each of those user journeys, as the user is clicking around within a custom app, that needs to be mapped. So there's a lot of overhead, and we're able to advance that with the themes of low code. And the great thing is that it's built on top of Azure, so we're able to use our pro developer companion tools and the developer tools that are sitting next to the Power Platform in the slide, as well as we're built on Azure. So scaling, all that things are built into the Power Platform inherently, really driving things like total cost of ownership and speed to value, which I think is a big one to be able to discuss today. So, we're narrowing our focus from industry down to Microsoft clouds, down to the Power Platform. The Power Platform is a feature-rich platform, right? It's a low-code development platform, and we see that it's multiple features, right? Power Apps is for that app development internally. Power Automate is the automation engine that sits in the middle, typically, of the data and those user experiences. Power BI for reporting, virtual agents for intelligent bots, and then we have Power Pages. And previously, Power Pages didn't have its own icon. It was within Power Apps, but it's really unique in terms of the value proposition that it has, and it was able to get spun off into its own thing. So we're really going to talk about really what that means and why. So Power Pages is spun off into its own icon within the feature set. And this really explains the differentiation that it has. If we look at internal users, Power Apps, Power Automate, Dynamics 365, those are all very inherent. They easily map to Azure AD, so it's a very seamless sign-on process. We very much know who we are, and we can bring guests into the organization to use those things, but there's a lot of extra considerations that need to be done to do that. And then we have external portals, external websites. Typically, this is done by traditional application development life cycles, right? Pro dev, all that. But Power Pages kind of sits in the middle, where we can do both of those. We can have internal sites set up. We can have external sites set up. We can have sites that handle both of those authentication mechanisms at the same time. So a good example is we have a customer story where the company has internal employees that will onboard, right? So they don't start as employees. They don't have an Azure AD, but they'll start as a guest user or a external user within the context of a Power Page, and eventually switch over to an internal user within it, and it is a seamless transition within the page. And that kind of brings us to our first poll question. And I'm new to poll questions, so let's see what happens. And Jeff just put up the poll question, and the idea is just to get an understanding of any familiarity with the two concepts of Power Pages and Dataverse, because we're going to dive into them next. All right, a pretty good mix. we'll just give it another moment. All right. That's good. Jeff, you have anything to add? I saw you going on mute.
No, I was going to say it's a pretty good mix there.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. So we will touch on some of the concepts of Dataverse because I don't want to necessarily gloss over that, and we'll get there in the next section. But the next thing is really talk about what are the really applicable use cases for Power Pages? When to use Power Pages and when to not use Power Pages. So, 1 second. Sorry, I'm fighting a cold, so I had to go on mute to cough. All right, so Power Pages supports data-driven websites. So we're not looking to make brochures or blogs, anything like that, but residential community services, partner operations, customer service is really where Power Pages was born out of as an adjunct to Dynamics customer service or FAQ sites. And where we see the industries where this is really landing is state and local government, manufacturing, high-tech software, education, and nonprofit. And typically what we're seeing is where they're making websites that are citizen-focused websites, application processing websites, registration, and customer service portals. And we're seeing huge momentum in terms of the monthly active users in this space. And one of the things that really is a great use case for Pages is to digitize a process. So if you think about state and local governments, a very easy one to think about, because if you go to the DMV, you need to fill out a PDF or a document that they PDF'd and brought down, and you sign it and you fill it out and then you hand it to, right? That's a paper process. And we can really build those processes into digital processes very easily, where we can facilitate the user to log into a portal and fill that out and submit it electronically. And that way we're removing the paper from the process and having great value gains in that process automation. Right. And just a couple of customer stories that we have. And really, what we see, the themes of these are, an increase in bookings, an increase in attendees, being able to digitize it really gives a better user experience for those end users. But then we also get, through the nature of what Power Pages is, we get an increase in efficiency. We get a cost savings and time savings in terms of the speed to be able to make these sites and be able to build them out and get them to market. And so really, what are those value drivers that Power Pages provides us, right? So what differentiates it from a pro code site? And the biggest thing to start with is really the security architecture. And we're not going to go deep into what this means, but the idea is that if you're setting up a pro code site, a web app or something like that, you have to build out these two concepts of authentication. And authentication is when Jeff logs into the site with his email, I'm going to send him a PIN notification that he has to approve. So that's understanding who he is. And then authorization is, what is he allowed to do within the site? What data is he able to see? What pages is he able to see? And all of that is provided for you within the Power Pages model. So it's, it follows the software as a service managed by Microsoft model. So you're able to have a citizen developer or a configure, someone that's configuring the site, build out these user journeys and the security model that's inherent to it, instead of having to build them with code and with APIs. It's all baked into one, where you're just configuring the site as opposed to building these from the ground up. So again, time to value is a big driver here. As we go further, Power Pages runs on Dataverse. One of the interesting things about the way Power Pages is set up, it's essentially a website that is a series of records. and those records are built on the Dataverse. We need Dataverse. Dataverse houses your infrastructure. And what that does is it makes it so we can rapidly spin up websites and we can move them from environment to environment, making the asset lifecycle management process very simple. As well as that, because it's built on the Dataverse, we get a lot of benefits from that as well. One second. And regarding the user experience, what we want to talk about and the value that we see in Power Pages is we want a process. So we talked about this digital process where we fill out a PDF and we mail it or we hand it in, and then it goes to internal side, right? So that process is an external and internal process. This could be an email that comes into an inbox that then is brought into a system. Those processes are really ideal for Power Page, and I liken it to two sides of a handshake, where we want to be able to build a solution that does both of these. So we would use the Power Apps framework to build the internal process. So if we think about the DMV submitting a form, and so the end user, the external user, will use the Power Page to submit that form. That form is then going to hit a queue inside a Power App where the person that works for the DMV is going to be able to facilitate that process in a very streamlined fashion, and then really get the values of the automation that digital transformation can bring. And the final real value driver is that Power Pages brings the web development down to folks of different tech fluencies. So the business user can do a lot more features and functions within the Power Page than John, we have a question about SQL Server. And we'll get there in a minute. We are having functionality that will allow for access to SQL Server backends, but you would still have a Dataverse. We can't decouple from Dataverse, and we'll get there. But back to, sorry, we're able to do development across the spectrum of tech fluencies in this managed way, with a drag and drop interface to create the layout and everything like that. And again, it goes back to time to value, being able to iterate and seeing those savings. So at this point, we've really assessed the why the Power Pages and what's the value there. So we're going to just do a little bit of looking into what Power Pages actually is. And this is from that maker perspective. If we think about anyone that's seen the make.power apps and the maker portal, this is the Pages version of that. And it really boils down to about 6 screens within the portal. The first one being just the Pages workspace. This is where you would build the actual page, set the layouts, be able to create new pages, and build in your content. Then you have the styling pane, which gives you the ability to style your website. You can pick from pre-existing styles and then go into it and be able to, in a simple drag and drop user interface, modify it to fit your needs. And one of the themes that we see in Power Platform in general is that we want to be able to stay in one system to be able to build out the entire functionality. So we have the data tab built right into this portal. So we don't have to go anywhere separate to build out the data model that supports this Power Page. So we can build in the tables and the rows and the forms that'll support this page right from here. We also have all the setup. So the administration that you would need to get this site live is all inherent into here. To go further than that and step up to that pro dev tooling, we're able to open up Visual Studio Code right in browser, and you can see the entire site right within that. So trying to make the folks that are on the pro dev be able to work to where they work, to where they're used to. And this gives them the ability to go in and modify right in line and be able to see those experiences seamlessly. This also can be done within the Visual Studio Code for desktop. You're able to download the site and manage it through there as well. On top of that, we have good starting points. So we have a set of templates that will get you farther than a blank canvas and be able to really accelerate that time to value, and as well as accelerate new folks learning, which goes into the Learning Hub as well. So videos on how to do things in Pages is all built into the portal. So you're really able to drive the adoption and the growth in the system right here. I'm going to pause for a second. Jeff, do you have any thoughts before we go into game changers? I know that was a lot.
No, I mean, great stuff. The big thing about the design studios is its ease of use, and it's you're not limited necessarily to the limits of the design studio because of you can get into VS Code. I know you didn't mention that any, but yeah, the design studio makes things a lot easier.
Yeah, that's a great point. That you're able to do that and blend the both experiences, that low code experience and that pro code experience. All right. So now we're going to talk about some of the new features that are coming out and answer some of the questions that I've seen come across. And these are really new features that are either in preview or just became available that are really ideal to highlight. The first being the concept of virtual tables. So within the Dataverse, and the Dataverse is the Power Platform's first-party data source. It is the database that backs up Dynamics CRM. So it's been around for a long time, and it's a great low-code database, essentially a database with a low-code front end. It's still a SQL database in the back end. And within that, we have the concept of virtual tables. So if we think about master data management, we don't necessarily want to duplicate data to put them into our system, right? So we want to be able to keep data where it lives. And through this virtual table concept, we're able to use API calls to send out and capture data from different sources. So Azure SQL is one that's in public preview right now, as well as SharePoint, to be able to surface them with the same look and feel and security construction as inherent tables within the Dataverse. And we also can do that right now for Dynamics F&O for any ERP folks in the room. And this is great because it does extend beyond the capabilities we currently have, where we would need to think about a process to move the data into the Dataverse tables first to surface them. But we're still using the great value that the Dataverse container provides, which is the authentication and the authorization that really speeds up external access. We also are going to be able to build Power Automate Cloud flows and trigger them from a new custom trigger, Power Pages trigger, where in the past we would have to build a HTTP request and build it out there. And this is going to be another way to pull in data from other sources that aren't supported in the virtual table context. And what's neat about this, and this is one of the first times we're seeing this from a Power Automate flow standpoint, is that these are going to be called synchronously, which means it happens right away, as opposed to being put into a queue. So the time delay between asking for the data and getting for the data will be greatly reduced in terms of the user experience. So we just released DocuSign in Power Pages, and now we're able to bring this functionality right into the process. So as we talked about digitizing an application or a form, one of the things we might need to do for that is get signature at the end of it. And we would either use some sort of click to authorize or something like that, but we need a signature. If we didn't have this, it would be a two-part process where it would reach out to DocuSign, but now we can really put it right within the flow, giving a great user experience where we use the functionality of Power Pages to collect that data, and at the end of the process, they're able to sign those forms that they generated from that data they just put in. The enhanced data model. So the data model is getting an enhancement. It's really some of the back end feature set to it. But what this does is it makes the Power Pages more agile, faster overall from the Design Studio experience, and we're able to put it into an ALM process. So in the past, we could move parts of it, but we couldn't necessarily move all of it, and it was a two-step process. This brings it all into one to make it very seamless, very much bringing down the barriers to entry in terms of the ALM process very low, so we can just build it into the same processes. That would be all aspects of the Power Platform. We also have Power Pages, Bootstraps 5 coming to Power Pages. So this is an update from the Bootstraps 3. And this is just going to give us the most modern version of Bootstraps. And Bootstraps, for anyone that doesn't know, is a web framework to be able to create responsive apps. And what this does is it gives us a lot more of the features that are newer in 5 that aren't in 3. For example, on the screen, you can see that this is using a media control that you wouldn't be able to do in Bootstraps 3 that we can now do in Bootstrap 5, really putting the latest style and modernization on top of it. All right. And now the fun part about this is this Copilots, right? So one of the neat things about Copilots within Power Pages is it is the most robust version of Copilots, arguably, that they've built out. And there's multiple experiences of the Copilots. Typically, when I talk about Copilots, I talk about 2 experiences. The experience of increasing the ability of the maker. So that's, in the being able to help it through natural language, help the maker create apps, create flows. But then we also have the ability to add the AI through Copilot to the end user experience. So they're able to reason over data and really use that chat functionality to have a more interactive experience with the data as a whole. And both of those are built into Power Pages. So we're going to watch a quick video that goes through this. No sound, so I'll annotate it. So the idea is that we have this sidecar within the Power Pages Maker environment where we just asked it to create a page for student applications. So this would have taken a few minutes to create the page, create each section, bring in the images, but now we can do it within a half a minute of writing. Now we can see that on the page that AI created, we're asking it to generate text for us. So this will use the Azure OpenAI GPT models to synthesize text. So you can put it in a prompt and what text you want, and then you can modify it as needed. A good example of this is I had to build a survey, and I wanted some canned survey data for my demo, and I used GPT in this context to create that survey data for me. And now what we're seeing is the Copilot create a form, and this is pretty novel when we think about what this means. It's not just creating all of the front end work here. This is creating a table in the Dataverse database with all this data and pairing that together. So this process of creating a form typically takes an hour if you're good at Power Pages. And you have to think through all the fields you need, manually create the fields, and then finally move it over. And then the other part that I'm going a little too slow for the video is that we're able to also add CSS styles. So this is bringing in the new frameworks within Bootstrap, JavaScript, and CSS to style that form and providing that ability for a AI to generate that style instead of needing a UI UX developer to add that in. So switching to the other perspective is that within Pages, with a few clicks, we can activate an AI-powered chat virtual agent that will sit on the screen. And as you can see, it's 2 clicks, And what's great about this agent is it's AI backed, and it will reason over the data in the website. So if you have an FAQ pages or something like that, they'll actually, in a similar way that we've seen Power Virtual Agents, it'll use that data and be able to surface that. And as a whole, AI has really moved the needle on virtual agents in terms of their ability to reason over data sets, as opposed to being very prescriptive in question and answering. So this is a really big feature set that's going to be widely adopted. And one final one is that in saying that that the Copilot within Power Pages is pretty robust and the most robust, is that they've also built Power Pages Copilot into the Visual Studio Code and both desktop and web experiences. So I'm going to start the video. But what's really great about this is that the liquid HTML, the fetch that you use within Power Pages is somewhat specific to the Power Pages domain within web development. And as you can see on the screen, in natural language within Visual Studio, we're asking it to make code to not allow an age that's less than 18. And so it just wrote that entire JavaScript function within that, and it brings in any of the nuances that are part of the Power Page into that code. So if you have pro code developers that you're working on adopting this platform, this will help them get up to speed on the nuances of Power Pages. You know, when you want to be able to pull like the person's username. Jeff and I just did that a few weeks back, where we wanted to know the logged in user, and AI is going to be able to help advance that. Okay, that's a weird site. Okay, so we are on our next poll question. I just give it a little bit. It's like these poll questions are geared up for the next phase of this presentation. All right, so great response overall. And it really does. Jeff did a great job here. Kind of go into the next part of this, which is we're getting ready for the demo piece. But before we get there, Power Pages is one part of the Power Platform, and when we want to think about end solutions, we really want to see the use of all the aspects, as well as the Microsoft Cloud. One of the value drivers of Power Platform as a whole is that it sits on Azure, adjacent to Outlook and Teams, and when the productivity applications that are widely used by organizations. And we really want to think about solution design and tap into those to really derive as much value through the automation and reaching folks where they are as we can. And so we have a use case that a customer wanted to leverage Power Pages to surface a salesperson's details on a website, and they would send out a mailer with a QR code on it. And you know, when we were thinking about this, they wanted to set up multiple sites or multiple pages within each site, and with a small amount of liquid HTML, JavaScript, and more HTML apparently. I was able to build a dynamic salesperson page that pulls salesperson details from the Dataverse. And really what we get here is a lot of value, that we can have it so that data in Dataverse is managed by the business, not by the IT teams that would own the setup of the site. And that way we can limit things like maintenance overhead throughout that process. So I did create a little QR code that'll open open the page. And what we see is that just to highlight how we did this and how this is inherent to Power Pages is that this is a static page, the salesperson page, and then we're adding appending to it to have the page know what data to pull. So this is building one page for the entire sales team as opposed to a page for each, which would have a lot more maintenance cost. And then in talking about this better together use case, this is bringing in bookings. So we have the salesperson leverages bookings as a way to manage their calendar, and we have brought that right into the portal to be able to have those users that get that mailer to be able to book right away. And as we look at this and I read through it, I stole some of the design aesthetic from my the realtor that I used to buy a house, and even the description, it was for Dave, and I realized that I didn't correct it and put Mike all the way through. So we're going to follow that process down into how we manage that data. But before we do, we're just going to go to the main page where we have the entire team. So this would be the entire sales team on a splash page where we can dive into each of them. And this is again using a little bit of code to be able to have it pull the records that it needs and then show them on the screen dynamically. So if there were 8, it would show 8. If there was 10, it would show 10. And then the other piece too that we just bring in is that we're going to sign in versus add Azure AD, so internal, but we're able to bring in the information. So we know that Mike Boris is the person that signed in, so we can add those type of more specific user experiences based on that logged in user. All right. And what this looks like from the Design Studio standpoint. So again, we do have the ability to drag and drop and move everything on, but this is an advanced component. So this is that, as Jeff said, that use case where we do have a pro code developer that's able to do everything right within the studio experience. So I just opened up Visual Studio Code to see what's going on from a coding standpoint. As long as it doesn't ask me for my password, we'll be okay. And what's great is we can see the entire website right now. And this is the code that was used. We took this from a template, but essentially this code that's on this screen, you can see it says hey, and then we have the that user full name, that little tag that we had, and we used Copilot within this experience to be able to assist with that. And I'm going to get off a command line screen as quick as possible because no one wants to see that. All right, so then the idea here is that this is the administration of the site, but we all have this data and how we can push that data to that end user experience. So I'm going to close this browser, and behind this should be, not that, let me close the show for a second. Should be the a new browser. And the idea here is that we have a sales manager that manages that entire sales team that has built a channel within Teams, and that manager came into the Teams and added a Canvas app to manage the user's data. So whoever built it provisioned this out. So now that sales manager can manage that data of all the sales folks right through Teams. So I can click into my salesperson and me, and now I can just go through and update all the times that I wrote Dave because I copied this from somebody else, and now I can update. And if I built the functionality in, well, I didn't. If we needed to remove them from the site because of whatever HR reasons, they got a promotion or they moved roles, we could easily do that in here without having to make a request out to the management of the site, that IT team. So offloading some of that work, which really does provide a great value. So that is the end of my demo. I'm going to head back up to slide. I'm probably on the wrong one. I am. And we are, so again, just going back to that value, we're decoupling the management of the site from typical IT to a shared management model where the data is really owned by the business and the administration would be owned by the IT, which is pretty typical for a website standpoint. And that's my presentation. I appreciate everybody's time. And Jeff, I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Well, first of all, before we kind of talk next about Ignite and wrap things up, does anybody have any questions? I know there's a few conversations going on in the chat, Mike. We've been handling those the best we can. But is there? Does anybody want to come off of mute and ask a few questions, or Mike, if you're able to look at any of them? It looks like there's some new ones in there right now.
Hey, yeah, this is Ali. Thank you for this demo. It's great. So quick question. So I don't know, how did you like connect that Visual Studio Code with Power Pages? Like, what was the secret?
So, so there's two ways to do it, right? So, and you think about Visual Studio Code, you do have the desktop version. That would be more native to pro coders. But then you also have the web version. So in this scenario, while I'm still sharing, I guess I'm just going to end this for a second. Let me find the right browser. We have an edit and code button. So within this context, this button handles everything and then opens up the IDE. So this is the simple way. But through the command line interface, the Power Platform CLI, you would be able to download the entire site and open it up in Visual Studio Code Desktop as well. So again, if your pro code developers are used to managing it from that standpoint, they would be able to do that.
Does that help, Ali?
Yeah, thank you very much.
Good question. Any other questions?
Yeah, Thomas had a great question, and David, thank you for covering that one. But just to throw it out there for the audience, activity monitoring, and it's something that we typically will see the need for, and within Azure App Insights, we do get those where you can go to that granular click page view level and bring that out.
Just to kind of follow up, thanks for the demo. This is really exciting stuff. Having built out lots of things on the Power Platform, including the Power Pages site, I'm all about making it easier. So thanks for highlighting that stuff. So quick question on the regarding telemetry, getting user activity. I guess I'm looking for like specific users, not just, and I'm not super familiar with Azure App Insights, but like, if I wanted to look at like a specific user's usage, is that something that's doable?
Yeah, I mean, so site analytics, right? So you want site analytics down to that user level. Yes, so it is doable. And because it's a website too, third-party tools that can handle that as well are easily integrated as well. So we can do it within the Microsoft stack, but we can also, so for example, if you're adding a Power Page in conjunction to an existing marketing portal and platform that you have, you would be able to use the tools that you have.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like ours is a secure app, so it's externally facing. We have vendors visit it to share information with them, so it's not for anonymous users. So for us, it's just making sure that like, hey, X user hasn't hasn't logged in a while, and kind of being able to have conversations around who, from external standpoint, like still requires access. So that's kind of what we would hope to be able to leverage it for.
Yeah, absolutely, Thomas. That's like 100% a possibility.
Okay.
Definitely in the wheelhouse. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
So, any online training you guys recommend for Power Pages?
Where I typically send people is Microsoft Learn site. Is the go-to place for that. But on top of that, what's really neat about the Power Platform and Dynamics community is that we have the concept of MVPs, and these folks are really folks that really contribute to the platform. And specifically, there's an MVP company called Engineering Code. I think that has like 160 YouTube videos on everything you could possibly do within Power Pages. That's my go-to when I need to figure out what to do as well.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff.
Thanks, yeah, no problem. We have one more question around using libraries. So yes, you can use libraries. You can either build your own libraries that will support whatever functions you're using within JavaScript within the context, or you can reference them. And there's a process for either calling those libraries, or if it's a custom library. So the idea there is that you always hide fields based on criteria. So instead of writing the hide and show field JavaScript function, you offset that into a library and call the library function. Absolutely doable.
Looks like Tom's got another question, Mike. Is it possible to associate a contact to multiple accounts?
Yes, but it's not terribly straightforward. And so in this context, I'm thinking, yeah, so we're talking context and accounts. Those are the two tables that are part of the Dataverse structure there.
Yep.
Yes, there was at last year's Power Platform conference, there was a presentation on using, essentially, they had multiple different authentication users based on, it's like an engineering firm, and they would have had different contexts in which they were engaging with that user base, and they did have a way to authenticate under those different users, which would give them the different permission sets that you're looking for. So let me see if I can track down some details on that. But that's definitely venturing into the pro code arena.
Yeah, no, just next place to look is all I'm looking for. I appreciate it.
Yep. Yeah, I'll definitely try to track that down, because that what's great about SaaS models in general is that it's the time to value. So that security construct is a black box to us. We have to take it or leave it, and that's where your scenario is one of those ones that doesn't fit that model. So more has to be done to get it prepared to fit the model.
Yeah, one day I can just ask Copilot. So looking forward to that.
Getting close. Yeah, Mike, what's the best practice around a development page and a production page?
So one of the cool things that I really like about the licensing model of Power Pages, which we're not going to get into, is that, well, it's licensed based off of the interaction with the site from the external standpoint. So we can spin up multiple sites at no initial cost, which is good. So this falls into the ALM functionality piece of it, right? So the best way to do this would be to have two environments set up. You would have a dev environment and a prod environment, and you would leverage the ALM. In terms of cost, there's a lot of variables that go into this, like what type of license you have. But if you had a Power Platform or Power Apps per user license, then you have access to unlimited environments. So as long as you had a gig of storage, you could set up a new environment, or you can even set up a developer environment to have as your development site. And then you'd be able to move your sites along and follow ALM practice. As you're writing in here, technically you could do what you're saying, right? So you could have one page and then you could copy the code from one page to the other. But we do have other mechanisms to support a more standardized ALM process. I hope that helps.
Yes, it does. What would the process be for going about that? Because we have a developer account while we're working on developing our solution. The problem is that as we're learning the Power Pages, we run into pitfalls and errors and, all that good stuff. And it's kind of getting jumbled with, learning and developing the actual solution and getting it right.
Yeah, so I mean, my thought there is just if you're having it out in a production sense, then isolating it in a production environment, doing all your development learnings in that lower environment, and then publishing to that upper environment.
Yeah, we don't have a production yet. It's just a dev environment, but it only has one page, and we don't have we don't have the ability to create another page within the dev environment.
Is it because you had to request a page get created for you?
Yep.
So one of the big limitations that we see within Power Pages is that it creates an app registration in Azure, and most companies that are worth their salt are going to limit the creation of those to admins only, and that does create a barrier for that process. So you kind of have to follow your security protocols to get that. But you could create a page, leave it off of navigation, that would sit in the background to be able to have that have that testing going on. So if you looked here and you create a page, there's a checkbox for add to main navigation. If you click off that, this could be a background page that is not accessible via any parts of the portal.
Okay.
You still technically run the risk of someone randomly coming across it, but they would have to try really hard.
Okay.
A question regarding React, Vue, Angular. I do not believe the Copilot is at that standpoint now, but they are looking to advance the functionality in the Copilot. But you are absolutely able to bring in React, Angular, and Vue into Power Pages. We've seen this as a common theme as well, where you'll have a one-page website that has a React app essentially sitting between the header and the footer to handle a lot of that advanced frameworks. All right.
All right. Any other questions? All right, Mike, do you mind sharing those slides real quick? The slides.
Oh, yes. Yep.
Just to get to the end, and we'll have our last poll question as well, which is a fairly common one. So real quick announcement. We're right at a month away from Microsoft Ignite. If you haven't registered already, the link and QR code is available. I know the entire it sold out as far as like attendance, in-person attendance is concerned. So anything remaining is virtual. Okay. Mike, can you click the next one? So final final poll question for everybody, and this is again, I ask this one fairly regularly at the end of each of our sessions, but you know, these sessions are made for you, and you know, what other topics are you interested in seeing in the upcoming Master Series sessions? I'm working on getting the agenda together for the next calendar year. I've got stuff lined up for the rest of this year. But what else can we get in front of you guys next year? Let us know, and like I said, I'll start working on building out next year's sessions. You know, definitely always a lot of interest in Copilot and AI.
I voted for all of them for you, Jeff.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Hey, I only voted for 3.
All right, folks. So coming up at the top of the hour. So this session, as usual, has been recorded. I will be consolidating the slides that Mike shared, as well as the recording of the demo itself. And I usually try to get a link out to everybody within the next 24 hours or so. So keep an eye out for that. And yeah, if anybody's got any questions, feel free to reach out, and I'll be happy to connect you with anybody that can help answer the questions if I can't answer them myself. Thanks again, everyone. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, happy to.